Welcome to the Jay-Z Show. I'm Zafar Sobhan here with Jon Danilowicz, and today we have a very special guest, Khaled Saifullah, who's the policy and research lead, as well as the joint convener of the National Citizens Party, the NCP. Khaled, thank you for being on the show, and thank you for joining us.
I'm really glad to be here. Thank you for having me.
Okay. Jon, as usual, I will start by throwing the ball to you. Tell us a little bit about what you're coming in today wanting to discuss, and maybe you'll have a few questions for Khaled.
Sure. Well, it's interesting. We try to do this every couple of weeks. So we finish 1 week, and then I panic a little thinking, oh my God, what are we going to talk about in 2 weeks? We've talked about everything. Then as the days go on, we come up with, okay, here are the topics. And then between that time and the time we record, there's a whole new set of topics. So I think this just shows how much is happening. And that's, from my perspective, this far away. I can only imagine what it's like if you're there on the ground and if you're intensely involved in all this, like Khaled is. So, when we started thinking about this, obviously we were interested in hearing about the NCP's views on the July Charter and the steps forward, referendum, preparations for election, and all of those topics I think are still good ones. But since then, we've had other things come up, which I'm sure we'll get to. But the first thing on my mind really is, as an outsider watching the July Charter, one would have assumed that the first one to line up and sign would have been the NCP, because after all, I think the July Charter, the whole idea of reforms, actually came from the NCP and the student leaders. But in this situation now where the NCP was notable by its absence. And there was that famous photo that was circulating of contrasting August 5th or August 8th of 2024 with October 17th of 2025 and the different personalities surrounding Professor Yunus. So that's what's really on my mind. So Khaled, I don't know if you want to give us a little bit of a sense of how that came to be and how things are going from your perspective.
No, you're right on money. NCP would still be the first one to line up to sign up to the July Charter. Yes, I'll straight over. If it's possible, you can cut it out.
Yeah, please.
So you're right on the money, Jon. NCP would still be the first one to line up to sign the July Charter when the implementation pathway is clear. We discussed at length in our party, and we know from the history of Bangladesh, we never had a scarcity of good documents produced, but what we had lack of is implementation of those nice plans. So from our party, we decided that what good is this charter if it does not have any implementation plan? One would think that the charter would also include how these nice ideals will be implemented, but it didn't have that. We asked for it. The government couldn't show any. The Consensus Commission didn't show any. So we said we will sign when these are available. We are refraining from signing at this moment.
And are you hopeful that this will happen prior to the slated date of February for the national elections? And if it does not happen prior to the national election, what does that do to the NCP's position vis-a-vis the elections?
It will happen before the election. The conversation has always been that these reforms, we will see initiation of these reforms before the election, right? And the Consensus Commission said that we have 15 more days, we will have an implementation plan and we'll submit it to the government. And they did. They submitted it 2 days ago. We think that is progress. But still, they gave 2 options for implementation. And the government is yet to tell us which pathway they're taking. One of these pathways have accountability clause, the other one doesn't. For example, for option 1, it includes an accountability clause that if the parliament is unable to reach a consensus on the specific wording of these proposals, then the wording approved by referendum by the people will be adopted in the constitution. That is a good proposal, we think. The other proposal does not have any accountability clause. Let's say the political parties fail to reach a consensus. After 270 days, then the entire reform process does not make it. So we are asking the government, please make clear which pathway you are going to. For option one, we have observations. Some of the wordings make it very uncertain. We have also raised questions about that, and we have asked for clarifications on it. Hopefully, those clarifications would come, and we'll be in a position where we have clarity on what we are signing for, and then, of course, we'll sign.
Okay.
It looks to me like, the election issue is just getting more and more complicated by the day. I mean, obviously, there's the big issue of, the election and who's going to be elected to what positions in Parliament, right? That's the easy part. Now there's the issue of the referendum, which, may very well happen on the same day. It's not clear to me whether all of the political parties will have the same position, will encourage their supporters to vote yes, or whether one or more of the parties will actually encourage their supporters to vote no. Seems that there's a huge issue related to voter education and voter turnout, particularly now with Sheikh Hasina and the Awami League coming out firmly, no vote, no vote. So they're openly calling for a boycott. And, we don't know yet how much support the Awami League has, whether their supporters will listen to her, and frankly, whether the other parties will want Awami League supporters to come out and vote. So Zafar, how do we make sense of all this? What do you think in terms of what we'll see on election day in February?
Well, I've always believed, and I continue to believe, perhaps in the face of some evidence to the contrary, that we're going to have elections in February, and we're going to have good elections. I'm in some ways glad that that the Awami League has laid its cards on the table, and they have now said that they're going to boycott the elections. And so a lot of us, there was some question as to what was going to be their position. And I think it crystallizes the issue, and it makes it very simple. In fact, for the interim government, now what's very clear is that that's putting aside the achievements and the accomplishments and also the missteps of the last year since they have been in power. Their legacy is now going to be judged entirely on this election. If they are able to deliver a good election with a good turnout, which is largely representative, I think that is going to be how they are viewed by history. Contrary-wise, if they are not able to deliver, then I think that's really what people are going to remember them by. So in a sense, it crystallizes the issues. I think it crystallizes the issues for all the political parties as well. And so now I feel that we have a path forward. To Khaled's point earlier, I saw very good communication just earlier today. Someone shared it with me from the NCP about the referendum. It was just it was a map of Bangladesh with yes, ha written in it, and explained what are you voting for. And the thing is instead of saying, well, if you're voting yes, you're voting for, and giving an abstruse list of policies and this, that, which might be more than the average voter can comprehend. This was like, are you in favor of the July uprising? Are you in favor of corruption-free politics? Are you in favor of, honest politicians? If you are in favor of these, that's what a yes vote means. So I think that can be communicated to the voters. I think it is being communicated, if I understand correctly, quite skillfully, and I think that's going to be the battle moving forward. I think there are two things. There's the referendum, and then there are the elections. And it is quite possible that some of the people who will vote in the referendum will vote no, and that's fine too. I think there's a big discussion going on right now as to whether 50% is going to be sufficient, or whether some of the parties are asking for a higher than 50%. But I think the NCP argument, which is that 50% in a referendum is the standard, and in the past the constitution has been amended by parties who have far less than 50% of the popular vote, I think is a persuasive one. So I imagine that is a argument which will win the day. And so I think, as we see in Bangladesh, things often seem chaotic in the run-up, but I think that the path will right itself. I mean, that's my optimistic take on things. I don't know, Khaled?
And I completely agree. On the question of the date of referendum, there is some politics
Yeah,
at play. As we can see, Jamaat has taken a firm position that it has to be before election, and
yeah,
BNP is saying it has to be on the day of election. And the fear that BNP has is that if the referendum happens before the election, it might attach with some conspiracy that the election would be delayed ultimately.
Hmm.
We are not getting into that controversy from NCP. We are saying that for the referendum, our only ask is that let us have the referendum in a transparent manner. Let us all
yeah,
focus on voter education. Let us tell
yeah.
people what they're voting on. The date does not really matter much as long as we have a transparent and credible referendum. And it can be on the election day, it can be before you guys settle it. But please, let's make sure that we all come together to have a really good referendum where people come to vote with a lot of enthusiasm, because ultimately we are trying to write a future of Bangladesh that is more accountable, that is more just, and that hopefully will be more prosperous.
Khaled, if I could say something, it seems in a lot of the discussions which have happened in the Consensus Commission and outside about the path moving forward, that you have the BNP on one side and the Jamaat on the other, and oftentimes it actually seems as though the middle path or the compromise path is put forth by the NCP on the issue, for instance, of proportional representation. You have two fairly extreme positions taken by the bigger parties, but I again feel that the so would you say that that is one thing which the NCP has been trying to do? It's been trying to bridge the gap and saying, look, we're all in this together. Why don't we try and live with something, come up with something which we can all live with? It may not be 100% what you want, but it's something we can all live with.
That is one, I think, a few perspective. I think the big part is they come from a position of I don't want, like, they come from a position of negotiation. So in negotiation, you ask for a lot and then you keep room for compromise.
Hmm.
So I think they have good intentions, and from there, they are not just taking very extreme views to be there. Rather, it's a position in negotiation. So that's that. But from NCP, our position has been principled because post July, we didn't think people who are with us, people who came to the streets, they would like a lot of negotiating positions. They would rather see that we take up principal positions. For example, for proportional representation in upper house and lower house, our position was very principled. In the lower house, if you have proportional representation, you are going to have a fragmented government, because none of the big parties in our country, they have ever achieved more than 50% vote in credible elections. So they usually hover around 40, 42, 45, somewhere around that. And
Yeah.
so we are going to have a hung parliament, and Bangladesh needs a parliament where there is clear direction. That's why we have said that in the lower house, we do not want proportional representation. Although, as a new party, asking for proportional representation in the lower house would have been in our benefit, but that's not where we
Indeed.
went. But in the upper house, we ask for proportional representation because, as you would know, in the lower house, with just 40% vote,
Hmm.
42% vote, sometimes political parties have received more than two-third majority in the parliament. So
Hmm.
basically, a minority is going to the parliament and have the capacity to change the constitution unilaterally. And by using that provision, in the past, parties have changed the
Which has
caretaker
happened on a number of occasions, yes.
on a number of occasions, right? And they have changed the rule of the game. They have changed how the election commission is run, how elections are
Hmm.
administered, and that has triggered crisis for the nation. So we are saying in the upper house, let's have proportional representation, so that for constitutional changes, you at least think of a broad consensus, because for constitutional change, you really need a broad consensus. You do not want one party to be able to change the rule unilaterally. So we have tried to take common sense positions in those places, although some people spread misinformation, did not try to clarify that NCP does not really want proportional representation in the lower house, but those are different conversations. Uh, on the referendum as well, uh, different parties look at different benefits based on the date of referendum,
Hmm.
but we are saying, please, let's focus on getting it right rather than when it is.
To take Zafar's comments a bit further in terms of the role of the NCP, traditionally in Bangladesh, you have electoral alliances form. and certainly BNP and Jamaat have been in electoral alliances previously. From my interactions with people in both parties, it seems that that's highly unlikely this time. I mean, Jamaat seems determined to go its own way, test its strength. I know in the past people from NCP have also told me that their intention was to pursue their own path. But if you look at electoral calculations, the challenges of running campaigns, resources, etc., and the political bargaining that takes place, it would seem to me that if I were in either of the other two major parties, I would see the NCP as a prize. And NCP would certainly bring something to the table in an electoral alliance for either Jamaat or BNP. If you want to break some news here on the Jay-Z show, you're welcome to do so. Zafar and I would love the headlines. But short of that, any indication or inclination you have in terms of whether or not NCP might ultimately form an alliance with one or more of the other parties going into elections?
I'll give you the principles. The principles are very simple. Let's say in the UK, sometimes parties on the left, we blame them because they're so fragmented. It opens the space for conservative forces to take power in a first past the post system, right?
Mm-hmm.
We also have a first past the post system. So alliances are meaningful. Alliances are meaningful when it is based on not just electoral arithmetic, but it's also based on principles. It's based on what you really believe in. We have said time and again that we are not going to go for alliances just to have an advantage in the election and have a few more seats. That's not the purpose of us. Why we do politics. Politics has to be principled to us, and from that position, let's say if we election is a few months away now.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of calculations changing, but for us, we have made it clear that we are not going to have any sort of even tactical conversation with forces that is anti-reform, that takes a position against reform, because reform is really, really important to us. So we do not know what happens from now on. If any party supports Awami League position there and goes for, say, we do not want reform, say no to reform, and no question that we are not going to be with them. Absolutely no question about that. So what are the principles that NCP would look at when it comes to election? Number one, politics is not just about power, it's also about principle. And for us, politics is a means of service. We want to abide by our own values. We do not want a country that is not reformed, that is taking the path of the old. So we might be with forces, we might unite with forces who want reform if anti-reform sentiments are stronger by the day. The other things, let's see where it goes.
Okay. Do you think, oh, sorry, if I could just come in very briefly. Do you think in some ways, though, Khaled, that we are, of course, the focus for the last 12 months has been on elections, but insofar as the NCP is concerned, I know, elections are important, of course, but this is a new party. And, it would be a mistake to think or hope that, that there would be tectonic change within 15 months. Since the end of the autocracy which we are living under. So if you look at political parties in the subcontinent, anywhere in the world, really, let's say Imran Khan's party in Pakistan, even the BJP, looking back in the history of India and what have you, these things take a long time. It's a marathon rather than a sprint. So my sense is that regardless of the results of this election, NCP will need to continue to carry on working. So it's not really so much about how many seats you have in this current parliament. It's a question of, creating this organization and structure. Is that how you're looking at this? Or how much importance are you giving to this upcoming election in terms of organizational strategy?
Election does not equal to democracy, although that is almost certain, or that is almost the case in Bangladesh. We have a lot of conversation about democracy, and that is the sort of only democratic outlet there. But if you look across the world, in certain countries, if you have certain number of signatories, you can trigger a referendum. If you have a certain number of signatories, you can maybe even put a private bill on the parliament. And there are many other ways you can really strengthen democracy beyond election, beyond the voting day, right? From NCP's perspective, our focus is like our party has an identity, the identity that we were born on July, from that spirit. And our aim, as we have been saying, is to have a Bangladesh that is against discrimination, to have a Bangladesh where we do not have fascist system, and we break down that fascist system so that we are more democratic there. These would be the ideals, and we must uphold these ideals in our actions. If we do that, this election is just a starting point. This election, as Zafar Bhai said, is not the be all and end all. We started this election, but what really matters is uh, how we present ourselves in this election. Then it will leave a mark on people's memory, and going forward, we strengthen our movement for the next 5 years, for the next 10 years. And over time, when people see that we are a credible force, we really mean what we say, then we can earn people's trust, because ultimately we have to earn people's trust. We cannot say that trust us from day one.
John, I'm sorry, you had something.
No. It's just interesting. I mean, this is really helpful, Khaled. So thanks for joining us, and thanks for being so candid. I'm just reflecting back on our conversations over the last couple of episodes with representatives or people speaking on behalf of the BNP and Jamaat as well. And I'm trying to think of what the campaign slogans will be. So Khaled, I think, has articulated well NCP's kind of campaign slogan. If I had to reflect back on our conversations with Naqib about Jamaat, I think honesty, anti-corruption, good governance, and there's a certain moral appeal, obviously, which comes from Jamaat. I'm wondering, though, what is the BNP appeal? Other than it's our turn, we're the biggest. Maybe it's competency. I don't know. Zafar, do you want to be the BNP whisperer? What's the BNP election campaign going to be based on?
Well, I mean, I think there are two elements to this. You see, first, there's got to be a defensive one, then there's got to be an offensive one. So, of course, the argument against the BNP is you'll have people say, oh, look, BNP, Awami League, two sides of the same coin. They've been ruling the country in turn, more or less, for the last 50 years. Plus, we want change. We want something new. BNP is not something new. So that's what they really need to overcome. So I think the way they overcome it, and I absolutely think that, being the party of the status quo, being the party of stability, a firm hand on the tiller, I don't think that's going to work in this election. I think they will need to project themselves as a new BNP if they are to hope to reach out to the younger generation of voters, to voters in general. I think to the extent that they can show that they have learned a lesson from their 17 years in opposition, they have learned a lesson from the July uprising, they have understood the pulse of the Bangladeshi people, and they have understood that Bangladesh can never go back to where it was before, then I think people will give them a look. But I think that is the message which they need to communicate to the people. I talk to young people in the BNP. I think the BNP's problem is it's not a very well organized or coherent party. So you talk to a lot of people in BNP who get this, and who think that should be the direction the BNP should move in. But whether then of course, this is the downside of being a big ship, is it's quite hard to maneuver the whole party in that direction. You have many leaders, you have many workers in every nook and cranny of the country. To get them all on board is quite a challenge. And it's something which I feel that they should have done. We've talked about this earlier with Tariq Rahman. If he had been in Bangladesh, if he had been campaigning out there earlier, that's something which perhaps would have been useful for the party. But that's the direction they should go. But bringing back to Khaled, since he's here, I feel that the real message which the NCP needs to communicate, as I said, is the message of change, that we are the change party. We are the party of something new. And I think here the challenge for NCP is, interestingly, and if you look at the student council elections, it seems as though a lot of that change constituency has been successfully appealed to by Jamaat. Jamaat is also positioning itself as a new political party, which is very interesting because, of course, as a political party, it predates the formation of Bangladesh. You know, it's a much older political party than the BNP, but they, I think, have fairly successfully presented themselves as such, and I think that's really where NCP needs to go, because I think NCP can differentiate itself very well from BNP on that issue, but it can differentiate itself from Jamaat on maybe political issues and message issues, but it also needs to show that when it comes to change, anti-corruption, new politics, that it really is a new party. And do you think that's a fair assessment?
Yeah, absolutely. That's a fair assessment. Just to touch upon the student union election, as much as Jamaat, we theoretically think that have appealed to voters as a new party, new forces, bringing in new ideas. Uh, Jamaat really had an advantage of structure in those campuses, because in
Yeah.
Dhaka University and in other places they have operated there clandestinely for the past 16 years, and they had their politicians, their student leaders embedded in Awami League student wings. So they were active in politics there. They had their structure, they had their committees. So what they did is they had their committees, but they did not announce their committees. And what they have said that no other party, no other political party, no other student wing of different political forces can have their committees on the campuses. So very strategically, some say deceptively, they have kept other forces out of the campuses while they operated there, and that gave them a huge advantage, because when you operate for about 1.5 years freely and keep your opposition out essentially, and they posed as the general students against any political arrangement. So BNP tried to give a committee there to be operational there, and they have staged protests. NCP tried to work there. They posed as general students and said, "We do not want you there." But later on, we see the same people trying to contest an election. So there was a bit of, some people say, deception there, not just new politics. It's the trick of the old.
Yeah.
But also they won there. They won those elections, and we have to really think what worked for them. If we do not want to take deception, what are the paths that we need to take? And I fully agree with Zafar that our focus should be communicating our own ideals, what we want to do, what sort of change we represent, and what would be the shape of the country if we are in power.
Yeah, to me, there's another interesting issue, which is this whole issue of what happens to the Awami League vote bank to the extent that that still exists. I've tried before talking about truth and reconciliation, and I immediately get shot down. Nobody's ready for reconciliation. Reconciliation is seen as rehabilitation, and certainly the senior leadership of the Awami League and those oligarchs are beyond the pale. So I think their participation in the electoral system has been decided. But that doesn't mean that all of those who would have otherwise voted for the Awami League will be disenfranchised or should be. So then the interesting political question is, to what extent do the campaigns appeal to those voters? And what is the message? Because again, from looking at the past, the more that the Awami League supporters see themselves as under threat, they'll band together and they'll look to some extent to their leadership in exile for support. So I think it's a difficult balancing act for the other political parties to not appear soft on Hasina and her cronies, yet be open enough to attract support from Awami League voters. So I'm glad I'm not designing an electoral campaign for any of the parties, because I think it's a really tricky challenge.
Words on the street, Jamaat or BNP has been putting out their message in a way that would be quite appealing to Awami League voters. I don't mean to sound partisan. For example, some of the BNP leaders have been on the airwave consistently trying to praise Awami principles, Sheikh Mujibur Rahman. their founding father of their party, and the hope there politically is that they would probably be happier with BNP than NCP or for Jamaat. For example, some cite some of the incidents where the Awami League has not been really attacking towards Jamaat, but they have been towards NCP. These are all theories circulating based on some facts, some interpretations. Uh, Political parties, of course, will try. Some of the times, the leaders of this political party said, of course, we will have ex-Awami League in our party. They're welcome. So these political parties are trying to get Awami supporters in their camp, and hopefully that answers your questions there. Additionally, Innovision did
Right.
a poll,
Yeah.
election pulse survey, and over there we have also seen, like, if Awami League is not present in the election, not many people feel like they would not be able to have a candidate they can vote. Of course, they would be able to vote. So many ask, like, if Awami League does not participate, a large portion of electorate would be disenfranchised. They would not have a candidate to vote. That's just not true based on those surveys. I think if you have Rubayat in some shows, you can ask him in detail.
Yeah. No, I've talked with him on a number
Yeah,
of occasions. You're absolutely right. And I think this is very interesting because a comparison can be in 2014, there was an election which was boycotted by BNP and other parties. But I was at Dhaka Tribune at the time, we ran a poll on the eve of that election, and 80% of the people said that they wouldn't vote in the election, which also kind of corresponded with the actual figures. You see,
yeah.
and contrary-wise, now we're seeing 80% of the people saying that they will vote. So I think it's important or they want to vote, even if the Awami League is not there. So I think
And
this is a very important point a distinction to make. Yeah, I
and
agree with Khaled.
Jyotibai just mentioned the stat that less than 4% of the Awami League voters will stay home, according to Innovation. So that's
Yeah.
less than 4% of Awami League supporters.
This is true. When you say 80% to vote, that's actually 20%
Yeah.
of the people never vote anyway. Actually, you don't really get that's a hugely high voter turnout in any event. You know, anything over 70% would be a smashing success in any election anywhere in the world. Absolutely. I think on that note, however, I wish we could. It always seems at the end of 30 minutes that I wish we had another 30 minutes, but I know, Khaled, you're a busy man. John, you're busy too. We all have day jobs to get back to. But thank you for taking this time to speak with us, Khaled. Good luck over the next couple of months, and hopefully we'll see you back here on the show in the not too distant future.
Thank you for having me. I had a lovely conversation with you.
Okay. Thank you,
Thank you,
John.
John.
Any final words?
No, I'm off to Islamabad tomorrow for a
Okay.
week-long visit. So it'll be my first time back in Pakistan in 10 years. So
Okay.
let the conspiracy theorists run with that. And when we reconvene in a couple weeks, maybe we can talk about the regional dynamics and Pakistan and Bangladesh and India and the region and how that looks going forward. So something
That
to
would
look
be
forward to.
that would be a great subject for discussion, I think. Absolutely. You got it. Okay. Well, thank you, John. Thank you, Khaled. And thank you, everyone, for joining us. This has been the Jay-Z Show. See you again in 2 weeks.